Exciting times. We are live on LinkedIn. Really looking forward to this one, joined by Khaled Bashir, who's going to be talking about advertising budgets, what you should spend on retargeting, and also the renowned debate on retention rates as well, whether it should be 70%, 100%, 10%. Seems to everyone's got a different figure these days, but it's definitely an interesting topic depending on what type of store you have. So, okay, Liz, welcome. Why don't you give us a quick intro into who you are and what you do at Hush?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Adam. I work as the director of paid media for Hush right now. We sell bedding. For the longest time, we were focused on selling weighted blankets and other sleep accessories like cooling sheets, cooling pillows, etc. Recently, we launched a mattress, which has been exciting, very exciting. And yeah, I manage all of our ad spend across Facebook, Google, Pinterest, TikTok, Criteo, Taboola, you name it. And at the same time, I also have my hands in other parts of the business. Love being involved in product development, customer research, and recently I've also been managing the email program, which is more going to be a temporary thing. I don't intend to do that for a long time. It's not very easy. But yeah, that's basically what I do at Hush.
Sounds like you're the Swiss Army knife of the company.
Yeah, when you're working at a startup, you gotta be whatever is required of you, right?
Exciting. Yeah, no, it's good that you obviously, because I think coming on to these two topics we'll get into, it gives you like a holistic sense of how all of them
100%.
tie in together. So let's just get straight into the first topic. And this is something that I've also seen this like platitude rolled out is 30% of your ad budget should be spent on retargeting. Do you want to just frame like where this comes from and also just go straight into what your opinion is and what you've observed working at Hush and other companies?
For sure. So this comes from a very, very siloed approach to marketing, right? So when you have a Facebook ads agency that's just managing Facebook ads, when you have a Google ads agency that's just doing the Google ads, right? Somebody else is doing Pinterest, and they all have their budgets. They all know that okay, we need to get the maximum value for the budget we're putting in for the client, right? And in most cases, they're well intentioned. They really do want to maximize your returns for whatever budget you're giving them. But the issue then comes is when in reality, what's happening is all these ad platforms are in many cases taking credit for the exact same sale, right? Like this ring that I bought, the Aura ring. I was super excited about this purchase. It tracks my sleep schedule, when I fall asleep, when I wake up, how good my sleep was. And I really needed that because my sleep really sucks. So I did my research between this and a Fitbit, and I had just made up my mind that I was going to go with the Aura ring because, went through a lot of reviews from customers. I don't think any marketing material that either of the companies could have sent me would have made a difference in my purchase because I was like, I
Yeah.
want to hear from customers and make my decision. So I did make a decision that I was going to go with the Aura ring. But then at that time, I'm like, okay, I need to wait for my next paycheck to come because I don't have the money right now. But I already made up my mind, right? And in that period, well, until my paycheck came in, saw so many Facebook ads. I saw so many display ads. I clicked on some of them, right, and sort of like fantasizing about my purchase. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get this style, this color, right? I'm calling my girlfriend, like, hey, look at this. I'm gonna get this soon. She's like, oh, you're crazy. It's another random purchase. But anyway, right? Like I interacted with so many different ads in that space, and when on the 30th day I go and buy this product, what happens? Facebook says, okay, this guy clicked on a Facebook ad and he purchased. Google says, okay, this guy clicked on the Google ad and he purchased, and they're all taking full credit for the ad, right? So from the point of view of the person who's managing the ad, it looks like, oh, we're doing a great job with this. This incremental ad spend really got this extra customer. Hence, what we should do is we should double down on the retargeting and spend more money on it. But I don't think that's the right approach to it. Like the short answer is, if you're spending 30% of your ad budget on retargeting, you are probably way overspending. And the long answer is, if you want to really figure out what the right mix is, it's going to require a lot of spreadsheets. It's going to require a lot of number crunching. It's not an easy task. But hey, in most cases, if you're spending 30%, you are probably way overspending.
So a couple of issues, obviously, probably that leads to people misspending it. I'm guessing attribution is sort of muddled along the way, where people, like all you said, all the ad platforms are claiming credit for it.
Yeah.
Have you guys figured out? I know everyone's dealing with the same problem now to some extent, but
Right.
any type of solution you found internally to deal with this?
We have explored some solutions, right? The number one thing was, forget about like getting to the absolute truth with attribution. Let's try to figure out if the total spend we're making is even moving the needle, right? Or are we way overspending? So the first shift we had in our strategy, this was around the time when iOS came in, is like, let's look at our ad spend more holistically, as in everywhere that we're spending money, let's add that up. And then let's see if that compared to our revenue is that a healthy ratio we are that can sustain the business over a long term, right? So
Hmm.
that was one shift. So I think the one number which has been talked a lot, a lot on LinkedIn recently. I've noticed a lot of brands mention it, a lot of consultants mention it, which is good to hear, that you should be looking at your overall MER, which is the marketing efficiency ratio,
Yeah.
to ensure that you're not overspending on paid ads, because that can easily happen when you're in scale mode. You start taking the budget up, but it's just almost a law of nature. The more you spend on your advertising, the higher your CAC is also going to go, and your incremental returns really start to drop. So that was one. We really started making use of the MER to understand our overall performance for our ads in relation to our revenue. The next thing is, obviously, we were still looking for a solution for how do we get around this attribution problem, especially post iOS. Um, One thing that is an issue for us is that we have a very high AOV. It's above $350, which means that there's often a lot of touch points with the customers, and there's a lot of dark touch points that we're not able to track at all. And then because we have had some excellent PR over the last couple of months, like our Dragon's Den appearance was huge for us. So when we do post sales surveys with customers, we actually find out that over 50% of them have either heard about us on Dragon's Den, or they were informed about us from a friend or family. So just because there's so many dark interactions, that's a big challenge for us. The high AOV is another challenge, just because the purchase cycle is a bit longer, which means people are interacting with us on many different places. These things make attribution extremely difficult, right? So that being said, we were still looking for a good solution. We tried using UTM links to provide, a more holistic view of where the clicks are coming from, but it it doesn't feel like it doesn't give us the full story, just because of all the influence that our existing brand already has on the customer's mind, right? Because what happens when you try to do click attribution, it's not factoring in for anything that's coming out of the things that you can track, every whether or not somebody heard about you from their friend or family, or whether they saw you in Dragon's Den. Click attribution tries to associate everything. Like, the assumption is that, oh, everything happened because of some click somewhere, either on an ad platform or on Google Organic or somewhere. So we have struggled with that as well, to find a real answer. What we are experimenting with right now is marketing mix modeling, right? So just being able to collect all of our interactions that happen everywhere,
Yeah.
and to model that with what's the correlation between all the inputs we have and all the outputs we get. And as those things change week over week and month over month, then what happens to the revenue? So we are experimenting with that right now, and I'm hoping to see some positive results. But yeah, just relying on click attribution. We even tried out some third party tools like Hyros, which wasn't very beneficial for us, right? So the idea behind Hyros was, okay, let's use Hyros's model to make our media buying decisions and allocating budget in different platforms. And if we use their model, and if it causes an increase in the revenue, then that means that model works better. But we didn't find that happening, right? So we got a different
Yeah.
model. We worked with Hyros, but it didn't really produce a big change in our revenue. So yeah, that's basically what we're doing to get around the attribution problem now.
A lot then. It is a very complex topic, isn't it?
It
We
is.
could probably go, I mean, we could spend 2 hours just talking about that alone. And there is a lot of tools. Like you said, Hyros
Yeah.
is a triple whale, and I've seen others. But I love the fact that you pointed out this word as well, dark social, which I'm seeing, really become popular this year. I follow Chris Walker in B2B as well, and he
Yeah.
talks about all these touch points that you can't see, but then that's also why those post-purchase surveys, I think, are becoming really, really popular and making a bit of a comeback at the moment. Like, how are you guys asking the customer the question? Is it basically like, where did you hear about us? Facebook, Instagram, Dragon's Den, or is it just a case of like an open ended, it's like, tell us how you heard about us?
So right now we're giving them options,
Yeah.
and yeah, there's a lot of options in there. About I think 15% of purchasers interact with the survey, which I think it's a bit low. I wish it was a bit higher, but yeah, one caveat with that is obviously there's a self-selection bias, right? It's
Yeah.
obviously very possible that a certain type of customer is more likely to respond to the survey, but it's just some of the things I guess you'll never figure out. But it was pretty eye-opening, right? Because prior to that, we had no idea that we had that level of brand reach, even that 25% of people who were buying from us said that it was because of a Dragon's Den episode, or the other another 25% are like they bought it because they got a recommendation from a friend or family, which was amazing to know. I mean, that it tells us we're doing something good with our products. So yeah, that's how we're doing it. Open-ended question. That's interesting. I actually didn't even think of trying that, but I think it's worth a shot. Have you guys tried it? Did you seeing good results with it?
So I know we have worked with Jeremy Epson before, who I'm not
Mhm.
sure if you've seen on LinkedIn is amazing with experimentation, and I know he recommends to keep it open ended to
Right.
remove that bias or get to a better source of truth. But I'm not sure how that would impact the. You mentioned you got like a 15% uptake on that. Maybe if it's open ended, it'll be lower. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to check into it. But yeah, it's very interesting to see these tools become more popular. And I think
Yeah.
as people struggle to say, like, what's the source of truth, that will become more prevalent. It's very interesting, actually. You mentioned like Dragon's Den,
Yeah.
because all these tools, one thing I've noticed is they're set up right on like a 30-day time frame, and that could be like really generous in itself. Like some people
Right.
said, up to 7 to 14 days. I think if you have like a more considered purchase life cycle like you guys, like obviously it needs to be stretched out a little bit more. But
Right.
where would Dragons Den ever appear? Like if you were to just use these main ad platforms, then you would never know the true impact. So I think having these like post-purchase surveys
Right.
is, like you said, really eye-opening. Maybe it's a case for like spending a lot more money on PR, because the
Exactly.
long-term effect. And from what I've read in books like How Brands Grow, he talks about like TV advertising, where
Exactly. Yeah.
people go, oh, like, well, it doesn't jump the revenue like 9 million% in a day, so it's not effective. But actually, they go, people who run like 2 adverts a year, if they
Yeah.
stop, like the revenue will gradually decline. So it's really interesting to see how those other things interact in the marketing mix.
Yeah, for sure. I think we have become spoiled by how easy Facebook made things. Let's say when it first started becoming popular in 2015, 2016, right? It's like, oh, okay, I can
Yeah,
just turn on an ad and then somebody clicks on it and they buy. It's like perfect attribution, almost perfect attribution, especially if you're selling low AOV items, right? But then
yeah,
the thing with TV is you spend some money right now and it might not immediately result in sales. But this is, by the way, what based on the advice that we have gotten from Sleep Country and a few other brands. We were recently acquired by Sleep Country, which has been amazing because we get access to this basically a lot of information, a lot of advice, information from a brand that spends a lot of money on channels that we are not on, like TV,
yeah,
radio, and how to measure the performance from there, right? Like there is no click attribution for TV. You can be like, okay, this ad played at the prime time slot, and then these many people scan the QR code and then bought it. It doesn't work that way. Which is forcing us to change the way we measure things. Right from now on, there's going to be a big focus on measuring metrics like brand awareness, brand consideration, and
yeah,
how do you measure these things like that. It's I think it's part of a maturity for every brand eventually get to that point when you start saturating your face, how many people you can reach and convince to Facebook, Google, Pinterest, and it's inevitable. If you want to keep growing, you have to diversify into these other channels.
And I think it just brings us around full circle to, as you said, looking at things on like a blended scale and putting all
Right.
of them together. Because if you obsess over a single channel, you're probably just going to go down the rabbit hole of being frustrated.
Yeah.
Okay, so this brings us on, Colin, to the next point. Talking about scaling and like payback periods, CAC. There seems to be like some randomized consensus, and I'm not sure where it came from. And I think it's a bit naive to say, everyone needs a 30% retention rate. And
Right.
one thing this doesn't take into account, and I know you'll probably expand on this, is the industry and the vertical you're selling in. For example,
Right.
like consumable based products obviously will have a higher retention rate than a mattress. Um, so yeah, tell me a little bit about your frustration with this, like bandies about figure, and also maybe what you guys look at as well to ensure that you're healthy and profitable.
For sure. Yeah. So yeah, retention rate, it's been something that's been discussed a lot, I think, over the last couple of years, especially over LinkedIn, Twitter, a lot of heated debates and threads about it. I think like slapping just a fixed number, like, oh, your retention needs to be 30% or 40%. If it's not, you're doing a terrible job. And if it's not, then like, if you're at 15%, if you can just increase that to 30%, that's the best thing you can do for your profitability. Well, first of all, it's not that easy to increase from 15 to 30%, right? It's not actually a 15% increase, it's 100% increase. Like, you're doubling your retention rate.
Yeah,
It's not an easy feat by any measure. And second of all, there's a lot of things that contribute to retention that are just basically out of your control, like that retention rate. That if we're talking about that, like how many people, how many first time consumers are going to come back and buy from you second time. There's a lot of things over there that are just beyond your control. The book you mentioned by Byron Sharp, over there, he goes in pretty detail about the double jeopardy law, right? It's almost like
yeah,
a law of nature, that brands that have the greatest penetration also happen to have the
yeah,
greatest retention rates, right? It's because it's not really about you know having a brand that's so amazing that people are just going to tattoo your brand logo on their arm. There's things like, most people are satisficers. They're just looking for the easiest way to solve their problem, right? And
yeah,
which means having a certain, when you have the biggest penetration, it also often means you have the biggest brand awareness. It's easy to recall
yeah,
who you are. You're also probably physically available in many different places, which is why your retention rate also happens to be higher. It's not because just people love you so much that they can't get enough of you, right? So there's some things that are beyond your control. A few other things that are beyond your control also that influence retention rates a lot. Alex McEachern talks a lot about this in his retention matrix concept, right? Like, if you start plotting your product on like a graph, right? And let's say the x-axis is the purchase frequency, how often a product like this is purchased, versus on the y-axis you have your item value, like how expensive the product
yeah,
is. That's a good way of dividing up, like, then you start placing your product in that matrix. And what you find is, let's say if you're talking about a consumable product, right? Let's say a bag of popcorns, it's a low purchase, and if you love popcorns, you probably purchase it at a very great frequency. Now, products like that are amazing for retention marketing efforts, right? Because it is something that's consumed pretty often. It is a low value item. People probably buy that many times, and you can do some things to actually influence that number further, like whether that is subscription, based loyalty program, whatever it is. It's you can actually influence your retention numbers strongly by paying attention to these marketing tactics. And now it's a different story if you're selling mattresses or if you're selling a piano, right? How often are you going to buy a mattress? Like, I haven't
yeah.
changed mine in like 8 years now. That's not even the average. The average person, we found out through surveys, does not change their mattress in like 14 years, right? Which is crazy. But yeah, I mean, so if that's what your store is, if that's your bread and butter by selling mattresses, your retention, like, it's not going to be 30%, right? Like, people,
Yeah.
out of 10 people who bought a mattress from me last year are not going to come back and buy another mattress unless the mattress you sold to them is something's wrong with it.
I don't
So
even think analytics software is that old in e-commerce these days. It doesn't stretch back that far enough, so you'll have
Exactly.
a 0% repeat purchase rate for most people.
Yeah. So these benchmarks, I think they a lot of these often don't make sense. You know, if you really need to look at what products you're selling, what the average selling price of the products is. Another thing is actually the I would say the products perhaps are the most important part of it, right? Like a lot of brands
Yeah.
have huge catalogs where they have a lot of different complementary products that you can buy from, and a lot of brands don't have that. If you're a brand that just started a year ago or 2 years ago, maybe you just have three products, and yeah, that's really like that might be why that just might be why you have a low retention rate. So there's many things to consider over here: how established your business is, how long you've been around, how many products you have, what kind of products you're selling, and also things like how much market share you have. It's like there's no one fixed number like your retention rate needs to be this. It's different depending on all these different factors.
Yeah, this is a super interesting conversation. There's a couple of things I want to bring up.
Yeah.
The first one is you pointed out like that double jeopardy law. Isn't it ironic how you seem to have like these people screaming on one side of the fence, like now it's the time to stop focusing on acquisition and you focus on retention, when actually sometimes the best thing you can do for your retention is to just grow your market share and acquire more customers. And I've seen that actually ourselves where we've worked with a brand who's scaled really, really fast, and the bigger they get as a company, actually the retention rate does start to come up. Whereas
Mhm.
sometimes when you first start out, like obviously, like you got a really high proportion of single time buyers, and the retention rate
Right.
is really low. And the other thing you brought up, which was I want to go into and talk about what Hush maybe have done, is like product SKU diversification as well. You guys obviously, were renowned for the blankets, but now you've got mattresses and I think other products as well. How has that impacted your retention rate? And obviously, I assume it's helped with remarketing to existing subscribers, right?
It has helped a lot. So our mattress launch was insanely successful, right? I can't reveal exact numbers, but here's one thing that I can reveal about it. On the outset, when we looked at it, we were like, wow, this is amazing. We spent so much money on ads and this and that, and looks like it brought in a result. And then when we started looking deeper into the numbers, turns out the ad spend that drove in new customers wasn't very successful. Like most of the sales actually came from our existing customer base.
Yeah,
So email marketing that we did, the SMS marketing that we did, the amount of time we spent sort of nurturing those leads, that's what made the biggest difference for us, right? And that's when we realized, oh, perhaps the biggest way of increasing our retention rate is actually to double down on products, right? And we got a taste of that even before the mattresses when we launched our 1 year back when we launched our iced 2.0 blankets and the iced 2.0 cooling sheets, right? So here's one thing you need to know about weighted blankets is that they make you extremely hot, right? Which
yeah,
sucks. If you're already a hot sleeper, you're putting this heavy thing on yourself and you just start sweating like crazy. So when we started talking to customers and we realized, okay, that's a big problem, we knew that we just had to launch a version of this cooling weighted blanket with a fabric that feels cool to your skin and cool to your touch, right? And that happened to be one of our biggest drivers of retention because a lot of people who had bought the original blanket, they loved it because it helped them with their sleep, but then they would be sleeping very sweaty. So they came back and started purchasing our ice 2.0 blankets and the ice 2.0 sheets, right, the cooling sheets. Then we realized, okay, if, this is looks like we're onto something with trying to address hot sleepers. So then we released our cooling pillows, and that did amazingly as well. And every time we are launching these products, what we're seeing is that the most of our revenue is coming from existing customers. So also, if we place our brand on that retention matrix, what we find out, we're exactly in that quadrant where Alex McEachern recommends that the best way to move the needle for your retention marketing efforts is actually to research your customers, find out what
yeah.
complementary products they can make the best use of, and then create those amazing products and give it to them.
I completely agree. I think it's such an underutilized technique, isn't it? I think, as you said, there's things that are just out of your control. And if you get the fundamentals right, you have a great product, great customer
Exactly.
service, then there's only so much you can do. And I say that as someone who, builds a lot of funnels for upsells and like sophisticated CRM. And one of the
Yeah.
things I think is interesting, you pointed out just then, is that researching your existing customers, and we do a lot of that baked into automation to actually uncover opportunities for future acquisition efforts
Yeah.
and product diversification, because you can't just like set some basic flows up and expect your retention rate to just magically go up massively.
Exactly, you're right. It's not just about, it's flows are we I think we tend to obsess over things that we seem like we can easily control, and flows just seems like that thing, right? Just create another flow, right? If they bought product A, then send them to flow A, and if they bought product A and B, send them to flow B, and then you have like 10 different post-purchase flows. They're supposed to be super specific, and then when you look back and see like, okay, did that actually move the needle? How much incremental sales did we get because of it? And you find out, oh, it wasn't really a lot, right?
Yeah,
I think we tend to obsess over these things just because it seems on the outset easier to do. But yeah, the focus, where should it be? Again, depending on where you are on that retention matrix. If you want to increase the, your retention rates, right? Like for example, a VIP program or loyalty points, it might be a good fit for some brands, but it's not for everybody, right? Just how you can't turn every product into a subscription product, right? Then no
yeah,
one's taking a subscription for blankets, like no, because how often do you buy blankets, right? So it's yeah, you need to really figure out where you are, and based on that, how much effort you need to put into retention and what those efforts should be.
yeah. No, definitely. Look, big fan of complementary products. Actually,
Yeah.
worked in supplements for a long time, and there was a issue at one point where whey protein was priced so expensively that basically to start a brand and release whey protein, it was like you
Really?
can't make money on it. But then there was a lot of brands who went, "Oh, I'm just going to release like creatine and fat burners." But what they realized was that customers will buy whey protein elsewhere and then buy their creatine and like fat burner and multivitamin
Mhm.
from this store. So they were losing out on sales through not selling a whey protein
Right,
underneath their brand. So it's almost like it's a necessary evil, but it's a very effective tactic, I think, to improve that retention rate.
for sure.
Yeah. This made super interesting insights. Love this conversation. If anyone has any further questions or comments, what's the best way to contact you? Sorry,
On LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, of
Yeah.
course, just where we are. So I'll give you a tag in that. But Khaled, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. I'm going to cut this short here, and I will speak to you soon.
Thanks a lot, Adam. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome, brother.